What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 204. And we are now post-Christmas, heading into a new year of 2025. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton. Joining me again today, man, they decided to come back after Christmas, and I'm really happy about that. My teammates, Mr. Michael DeRosa and head coach Scott Parrott. Fellas, first of all, how was Christmas? I hope you guys had everything, enjoyed it, being around the people you wanted to be around, I'm hoping. And two, Coach, we're going to talk about this. I sat down and watched your we live text during this, full disclosure. I sat down and watched Coach's high school coaching days yesterday, when he was over there in Pennsylvania just killing it with Anvil. What's the last part of that, Coach?
Cleona.
Anvil Cleona. I watched a big time tournament game. This dude had hair. He wore these dope suspenders. He was so cool back in 1999, Coach. I know we took the trip down memory lane yesterday when I was live texting you about it, but first of all, how'd Christmas go? And then Anvil Cleona, that's a first shout out of the day.
Well, Christmas was great. We spent it here in Houston just with my wife and my daughters, and just had a great time. Spend some time with them again, which has been one of the great joys of this year of being off. And so we had a great Christmas, and we had friends over last night. We're watching bowl games, talking basketball. You and I were texting for a while about that crazy game, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, I mean, it's fun time of the year with college basketball now about ready to hit the conferences. We have a bunch to talk about today. Some of it on court, some of it off court, and both things being very, very relevant. And I know we'll get to all that. As for the Anvil stuff, look, those stories are pretty crazy. And
DeRosa, for those watching along live right now, I took a picture that I sent to Coach. This was post game after that crazy tournament win. He's been interviewed by the local TV there. And that is our guy right there with the nice set of hair, with the suspenders. And the post-game DeRosa was awesome, too. The announcers were asking you about, like, hey, the emotion. These, man, I just love coaching. He said, I get a little worked up because there was a moment there he got worked up. He goes, but, hell, I like to let my passion show. He said, I'm not going to apologize for it. It was awesome. It was a great game, man.
Yeah, it was one for the memory books for me, for those kids, and for the whatever 2,500 people that were packed in that gym that day, versus Reading Central Catholic. And, it just sometimes things work out for you and you just try and put your kids in a position. But to be successful we had such a smart group of players for high school kids that they just were, in spite of all that was going on with the calls and the timing, and was it 3 shots? Wasn't it 3 shots at the end there? Our kids kept their calm, ran a play that I put in a huddle, and I was joking with you that the kid made a smart play by not throwing it to our star and throwing it to the kid who ended up getting fouled. And that's the last thing I wanted him to do. Yeah. I said, no matter what, Isaac, I said, you throw the ball to Mark Lineball. I mean, he had 30-something points. He was state player of the year. He was an incredible player. And he went to Colgate and was a great player there. I said, I don't care what happens, throw the ball to Mark. Like, he's going to shoot it. He's going to make it or miss it, and I'm going to live with that. And he didn't throw it to him, threw it to the worst 3-point shooter on the team, and a kid fouled him, and he stood there and made 3 free throws to send it to overtime.
Crazy, DeRosa. I'll send you the link so if you have time to sit and watch it. It's a really good game. Keep in mind, it's VHS quality, so this, it's very hard to see at times, but great high school basketball game from 1999. And I was texting Coach this line ball kid, man. I think you could put him in today's game. The way he played back then, he could play today if you transplanted him. But, yeah, I mean, Coach loses his mind because a kid gets fouled. They're down 3. The line ball kid shoots. They push him from behind. And
I figured what was it didn't matter. To me, the game was over when they didn't, So if I got kicked out or got a tee, I didn't even really care at that point. I just could not believe they didn't call it shooting.
Yeah.
And so my assistants are grabbing me. It was chaotic. It was pretty chaotic.
It was nuts. I'll send you the video, DeRosa. But
please do.
How was your Christmas? And now that you've heard about Coach from 1999, any thoughts on? I need to send you the video. It's a really good game, to be completely honest.
Yeah, you must have to. If you guys really want to feel old, I wasn't alive then. So,
oh my God!
Now you feel old. Yeah,
I didn't need that
this morning, Michael.
I was 10, but how was Christmas, man? I know you're back home in DC.
Yeah, back home with the family. It was good to see everybody. I went up to Connecticut for a couple of days back here. Good to see everybody. Had to catch up on some basketball. Watched the Utah State, San Diego State game. Watched the condensed highlights just before we got here, so I'd have something to talk about on that game. Had to go back, watch a couple games. But, it's nice seeing the family. That's really the main thing.
Right. Well, you didn't miss a whole lot of basketball because that's why we didn't do a show Thursday. We told you guys last Sunday, Coach and I, that there's just not a whole lot of games. We're going to start picking it back up. We got quite a bit to talk about today. We want to have some fun at the top of this thing, but there's a couple serious things we want to talk about. Not so fun here we'll lead off with. And it came out, when did it happen? Was it Friday night or yesterday afternoon? Within the last 24, 48 hours. With just kind of the sudden news, we lost honestly a legend and an icon in our sport, Greg Gumbel. Not only our sport, but the NFL. I mean, he was a staple in CBS. If you guys remember, this last March Madness was the first year he had missed in a long time. He was not on the CBS broadcast. He didn't do Selection Sunday. And so we kind of figured maybe something was going on. But, I think a lot of us, it kind of went out of the back of our mind. And then you find out he passes away from cancer. We talk about it all the time, cancer and all that stuff sucks. It absolutely sucks. And Greg Gumbel, as much as we talk about Dick Vitale and other legends of our sport in the broadcast game, Greg Gumbel's right up there. He'd be on the Mount Rushmore because you can't have a Selection Sunday without hearing his voice. And as a matter of fact, I've got a clip here I'd like to pull up just for maybe those who forgot or just kind of need the nostalgia kick here. This is from the 2009 NCAA tournament, and just again, March Madness is symbolized a lot of times with Greg Gumbel doing the call, opening up the broadcast for the selection show. So enjoy this little 40-second clip, and we'll talk more about it here in a minute.
Selection show. Tonight, CBS Sports begins its 28th consecutive year covering March Madness. From the first tip of the first-round games all the way to the trophy presentation, CBS is your exclusive home for the NCAA basketball tournament. Now, just a short while ago, the chair, Mike Slive, and the Division I Men's Basketball Committee adjourned after finishing up this year's tournament brackets, and now it is time to reveal the overall #1 seed in the tournament, the Louisville Cardinals. The second time they've been a #1 seed in school history. The last time was in 1983. You'll recall they knocked off #1 Pittsburgh back in mid-January. The Louisville Cardinals, the overall #1 seed in this year's NCAA tournament.
The irony of that being 09 clip was I was at Arizona State. We were in the tournament that year.
Yeah, and that's when Harden was there. And
you're right. He's a legend. I mean, all of us that have followed this sport, whether you're Michael's age and 24. What are you, Michael?
20. How old am I? I'm 22.
22. So whether you're 22 or me at 57. Such a huge part of everybody's life that follows this sport. And the other thing I think it was been really, really special is just the incredible stuff I've been reading on Twitter or X of the tributes from his colleagues. Not just stating what a tremendous professional he was, but what an incredible person he was. And that to me, symbolizes or sums up what we all you want to hope in individuals that you see on a TV personality, but you're never really sure because you're not behind the doors and the stuff. And it's just been great to read. It's obviously sad that he's gone, but he will live on with all of us for forever.
Well, DeRosa, how it is, all of us that love this sport so much, we look forward to Selection Sunday. We plan our days around it. It's a big deal. When the Big Ten tournament final ends, it's time to gather around the TV or the computer or whatever you do these days. For me, it was always the TV. Me, my dad, my brother, all of us, and just watch it. And when Greg Gumbel opens up, that CBS intro would hit, and you would see his face there. And just kind of what we saw in that clip of hi, I'm Greg Gumbel at the CBS studios. Welcome to Selection Sunday, all that. Dude, it gave you the butterflies because it's time to go. And nobody's voice could have made you feel that way, I don't think, other than Greg Gumbel, because he had kind of that soft yet firm voice. And he made everything feel like a big deal around March Madness.
100%. He has that really calm demeanor, that way to deliver things. That one thing I think that's kind of going to get a little like preachy here, but one thing I think that's kind of lost in like the newer sports media age is that media figures try to be the star of the show. Like a Stephen A. Smith, for example, he'll obviously, there are some clips of his that I absolutely love. They're just so funny, but he wants to be the star of the show. Like you see ESPN, you know, like when they used to do like the hero shots where you like look up at an athlete and like the athlete's walking into an arena to be like, this is like the star of the show is here. They're doing that with Stephen A. Smith. And it's like, that's okay. But like the show isn't about him. It's about a James Harden. It's about a LeBron James and Anthony Davis, or even if we're going football, it's about a Patrick Mahomes, a Tom Brady, whatever. And then Stephen A. Smith wants to be the star of the show. A guy like Greg Gumbel, he knows the show is not about him. It's about the athletes. He knew that. He knew that he wasn't the star of the show. He would get the bracket show kicked off. It's like, this is about these teams seeing their moment to shine. Or when he's broadcasting a game, this is about this moment shining. And he had that calm, relaxing demeanor that just like you can associate with big moments. And where everybody else can like throw that like crazy, oh my goodness, this happened. He's definitely showing emotion, but also in that way where he's not trying to be the star of the show.
And
it's
it was
just,
oh, sorry, Chris. I thought you were down to mine there. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish.
It's just, I really respect that. That's something I really respect it. And as you mentioned, the broadcasting world lost a legend. He was one of, never had to be the star, but was just excellent at what he did. And rest in peace, truly.
And he was a great setup, man.
Yes.
Like he would go over these brackets. You talk about the East region coach, like in that, like Louisville, #1. And you'd look at the bracket and he would be such a great, calm setup, man. He'd look at like the 8-9, and let's say it was Arizona State and Kansas or whoever. And he would throw it to Seth Davis. Big Seth, I think we have a potential blockbuster matchup ahead here. If Arizona State can get by Kansas, that Louisville game, both tempo. And he did it so perfectly. He was amazing at what he did.
Yeah, he was great. And if you get a chance, did you see one of the clips they've been going around is the one with Barkley telling the story about washing his uniform?
Yep.
I mean, you just want to get a good smile and laugh and think of Greg Gumbel. That's worth your 3 minutes.
Yep.
It is a very funny clip.
Well, rest in peace to an icon. Cancer obviously sucks. Horrible. I know all of us appreciate his contributions to our sport and making March Madness. I mean, he'll forever be symbolic with CBS and March Madness as long as it's on that network. And it's a shame, man. March Madness will be definitely weird from here on out, but we appreciate the memories. We didn't even talk about him introducing the first ever One Shining Moment. So symbolic with that as well. So really sad news. Another piece of news that happened over the holiday break here is Jim Larrañaga. Now, I don't think this comes as much surprise because we have, if you go back in the archives in the last, basically since the start of the year, I've mentioned it. We've talked about him and some other guys. We all thought it would happen at the end of the year, especially since Miami's been off to such a rough start and they're not very good. But he finally he's another one of these old school dudes that had a lot of success that it just got too much for him. He even mentioned in his press conference announcing his retirement that he just felt like he wasn't the guy for the job no more. And I know there's some people that are giving him hell about the NIL and his comments.
Yeah, I got some comments about that. Then.
Well, maybe I can echo some of those and I'll throw it to you. I think it's a tad hypocritical of these people to be upset about it. Their debate here is, well, he didn't have a problem with it when he went to a Final Four 2 seasons ago. His team was bought by NIL. Now he has a problem with it because they're losing. Well, where he's coming from, I think, is the fact that the NIL is supposed to have been something different. It's supposed to be allowed to kids to make money off of doing autographs, doing commercials, and not having schools and these agents basically bargain for $5 million deals and stuff. And he's a dude that's been around. He's 77, something like that. I'm trying to pull it up here.
75, I believe.
75. Yeah, 75. Just turned 75. He don't have to deal with this no more. He finishes his career with 744 wins, 505 losses for a career win percentage of 596, 16-11 in NCAA tournament, 7-8 in the NIT. Made 2 Final Fours with 2 different teams. One of them being one of the more historic runs in George Mason. He took George Mason to a Final Four, knocked out Connecticut, knocked out a lot of really good teams in the process. He doesn't have to do this no more. Now, I get if you're a little frustrated, maybe quit in the middle of the year. But, man, Miami's going nowhere. Gives him a chance to get a head start. It's not like if he quit and the team was doing good or he had health issues or whatever. I don't have no problem with it. I think people are complaining about his comments about NIL, just want to complain about everything. So, I mean, we lost another big-time coaching name in the sport.
Yeah, so I agree with what you said because I try not to. I don't get into battles on Twitter. I tend to learn because like I used to tell my players, hit delete,
Yeah.
before you send the wrong thing or send some of the things because you can't win those. You go down a rabbit hole with people on that, but some of it just makes me so mad because. First of all, Jim Larrañaga didn't like it probably the year he went to the Final Four. I mean, just because he said he didn't like it when he was retired doesn't mean he's being hypocritical. He was probably annoyed with it from day one. The fact that he was able to have somebody buy a team or help him buy a team for the year and they ended up making a great run. Well, other teams had guys being bought too, and they didn't make the Final Four. So the bottom line is those older guys that have been doing it forever, they don't want to deal with it. And some of us, I can't blame them if they don't need to, right? In other words, Tony Bennett doesn't need to deal with it. Coach K didn't need to. Jim Larrañaga doesn't need to. They're all going in the Hall of Fame if they're not already in it, like Coach K is, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm just saying, I'm happy that he, did it on his time that he wanted to. He is a class act. I've gotten to meet him a few times over the years. I know people that know him very well that love him. And much respect for Coach Larrañaga and enjoy your golfing in retirement.
DeRosa, when I was coaching in high school, we talked a lot. This was when Larrañaga was still at George Mason. He was so good with his offensive sets. We talk a lot and implemented in our high school team that we had great success with. But not only that, you look at the ACC. We've talked in the last 18 months about kind of the ACC's downfall overall as a conference. This is another big-time coach that's left that – it really is a new revolution because you look in the last, 24, 36 months, they've lost Coach K, they've lost Roy Williams, they've lost Jim Boeheim, now they've lost Larrañaga, they've lost Tony Bennett. I mean, it is a new dawning in the ACC of, I guess, the younger coaches, but they're going to have to figure it out. That's Larrañaga, 744 wins, 2 Final Fours at 2 different stops. That's a hell of a career.
Yeah, the ACC is definitely, we're going to see some new blood. We're going to see some new teams rise to the top, especially because looks like Leonard Hamilton too. I mean, he looks like he's in his 50s, but he's much older than he looks. And it looks like he's probably going on his way out too. So we're going to see this new crop of ACC coaches. But to Coach's points earlier, one, very good decision to not get in arguments with people on Twitter. I definitely see it. And it's like, I get really close to biting. I've definitely done it in my time before I've matured. And frankly, I get really close sometimes too. Eventually, I'm going to hit a point where I just bite on something stupid that I know I shouldn't, but I bite. But to Coach's point, my friend Matt sent out a tweet. And Matt, he does a lot of work with the Patriots more so than college basketball, but he's a college basketball fan. And he made this point that just because Larrañaga benefited from NIL doesn't mean it's hypocritical. If anything, he tried to adapt to this new world at age 72, 73, whatever. And he didn't like it. There was some drama, if I remember correctly. I don't have any, I haven't gone back and done the research. I just thought of it when we were talking. That Isaiah Wong, if I remember correctly,
wanted a shit ton of money.
Entered the transfer portal, threatened to enter the transfer portal because he wasn't getting enough NIL because he was returning. And they had to, pay him up then. I believe he was part of the team that ended up making that huge run. That's your star player who you developed over time, who, was incredible on that Final Four team. He's just yeah, you're not paying me enough. I'm going to leave. That would frustrate a coach, even if you're going to go to a Final Four afterwards. That must frustrate him. And he tried to adapt to the new world. And if he doesn't like it, I feel like he's well within his rights to say, yeah, I don't like it. And a lot of the NIL discussion definitely really gets under my skin because either teams just use it as an excuse when they really shouldn't, or fans will, or in this case, people don't respect a coach who tried to adapt to it and said, the next generation just needs to take this from me. This is I can't, and I feel like that's perfectly okay. That should be perfectly okay. But everybody wants to jump at someone for NIL takes. And it's just, I don't know.
And the stupid stuff too of he was okay leaving George Mason to go get a better opportunity in Miami.
He was there for 10 years, not one.
Exactly. He was at every stop for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like he had 3 jobs in the last 40 years. He was at Bowling Green from like 86 to 97. Then he was at George Mason from then until whenever he left for Miami. It was like 2011, I think. And then he was at Miami from then, like 2011 until now. He stayed over 10 years at every stop. So it's not like he bounced around and like, oh, highest bidder. No, he stayed over time and built and built and built. And he finally just had enough. And the people who are like, well, it benefited him and now he doesn't like it. Now get out of here, man. You guys just want everything to change so fast. Like the tech revolution. Everything's got to be new. It's got to change. It's got to, if you don't adapt, you die. Guys, sometimes you just need to sit back and understand why people do stuff. It's okay. He's done this. He tried it. It's not for him no more. He's 75. Like Coach and Michael said, he has nothing else to prove. Get the hell out now because obviously the team's not responding. They're not very good. So get out now. Let somebody else try it. But I will ask this. Miami, I think, is an interesting job because, one, who wouldn't want to live on South Beach? You're in the ACC, so you should theoretically have some money. You would think some of those Miami boosters that give up for football, you get the right coach in, could get some money NIL rolling for Miami. I think Miami with the right coach is a hidden gem coach as far as a landing spot.
Yeah, it'll be an attractive spot for some big names for sure. And they have an AD that, you know, I think will have a grasp on what it's going to take or what it looks like to get a guy in there that you know can help, you know, with that NIL stuff and can also really coach and understands the ACC. And it's also like too, you know, like we talk about Duke, you know, now's kind of a time too to strike in the ACC, right? I mean, Louisville made a great hire. We all agree to that. And they're going to be good. I think Louisville is going to be back, you know, for the next, and I said that 2 shows ago or whatever, for 10 years. It was a great hire. And I think Miami will do something similar. You know, a guy that's won somewhere, the guy that understands the NIL, a guy that understands the ACC. And you're right. It's an attractive job for sure for many reasons.
DeRosa, you're going to laugh at me, but I'm being 100%. You know, a guy that I can't say for certain, but I bet he thinks that, man, I should have waited, is Calipari. I think you put him in Miami with those resources and a weaker ACC. I think you put somebody like him in Miami. And I'm not saying he's going to leave Arkansas because I don't think that. I think Arkansas is his last stop. But I'm saying I would bet if I'm Cal thinking like, damn, if this would open up earlier, I would have took Miami. Because who wouldn't want to live in Miami instead of Fayetteville?
Didn't his buddy, the Chicken Man, get him the Arkansas job?
He did. But there's been – this ought to be an off-topic show. There's been a lot of reports that came out within that Arkansas camp that everything's not as rosy as it seems.
You know who I think would have been the guy? Musselman going instead of going.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know anything about. I know Musselman coached at Golden State, so he might just like it out there. But like just feeling wise, knowing absolutely nothing about these guys' personal life or anything like that, it just kind of feels right. Him in Miami.
Well, how about Andy Enfield?
That could work too. But
because he had his best success.
Andy Enfield likes Texas or something.
But he had his best success at Florida Gulf Coast, right? Yes. And he's kind of familiar with that area. You know, his wife's a former supermodel, so I guarantee if she'd enjoy. They were out in LA, go to Miami. It's not a whole lot different. So it'll be interesting. I think that Miami job will be good. It's just you got to get the right coach in there that can adapt to the whole NIL and all that. But like Coach said, the ACC's for the taking right now. Duke seems to be okay. Carolina, Louisville, but there's some room there to make Miami back into kind of a threat quickly again. Yeah, very quickly. Well, let's talk about some of the action. Well, we joked about it. Wasn't a whole lot going on during the holidays, but we did have a couple big games yesterday. Let's go out. Coach, I seen your former guy or your guy, James Harden, was at this game out there at the Intuit Dome yesterday, along with a lot of different Clippers. You had UCLA playing Gonzaga in a ranked matchup yesterday. And I'm curious on your guys' thoughts because I sat down and obviously watched this whole game. UCLA wins 65-62. Really good game. These two, every time they lock up, seems to put on a classic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
When UCLA Gonzaga lock horns over the last 20 years. Ryan Nembhard plays 40 minutes. He doesn't come out of the game, 16 points. He was really good in the second half. 14 of his 16 came in the second half. But those final 10 seconds were, I still can't describe them. So he gets fouled, has a chance at the free throw line to tie the game up, misses the second free throw. UCLA gets the ball. Gonzaga still has a chance, only down 3 with 4. Well, I think when they inbounded the ball, there was like 6.5 seconds. He gets it, takes a couple dribbles off of a catch there, and decides to heave one with 4 seconds to go from three-quarter court when he could have. That kid was rattled. As good as he was in the second half with the 14 points and really was the catalyst of Gonzaga being back in the game and having a chance, those final 10 seconds are ones I'm sure today he's probably kicking himself over.
Yeah. So, and again, I put myself in Coach View's seat there. I mean, as a coach, like what the kid, and this is an experienced, tremendous player. What is he doing? Like what? I mean, it's inexplicable.
As fast as he is, Coach, with 4 seconds, he could have
all the way to the rim.
They're down 3.
Oh, my fault. That's right.
They were down 3, but where he caught it at, they threw the ball inbound. I think it was to Ben Gregg, just about three-quarter court.
Yep.
He comes in because he was the inbounder, gets the ball with 4 seconds to go, just on the other side of half court.
2 more dribbles and pull up.
As fast as he is, he had time for about 3 or 4 speed dribbles to get to a spot for a better three-point look. Crazy. It made no sense.
Especially after the play they ran before where he ends up getting fouled, but then short-arming the free throw was like a really well-designed play. Like it was really cheeky the way they ran it. Like that was really smart. And then they come down the next play and it's just like a complete brain fart. It was really – you talk about the late game execution in college basketball a lot, Josh. That was one of those – this is definitely a college basketball game.
And that's Mark Few. Like this isn't, some young guy in his first game. I mean, that's where it's hard to believe it. And that's why Mark's probably like, what in the hell?
I think it's a great reminder, too, that as much as we look at Ryan Nembhard, who phenomenal point guard, we talk about his assist turnover ratio, how fast he can be, and all the good stuff he does. At the end of the day, he's still like a 22, 23-year-old dude, still young. And you could clearly tell he was rattled. He short-armed that free throw that would have tied the game. And then he gets the ball and heaves it with 4 seconds to go, just over half court. Like you could tell, sometimes I think we forget that, yes, as talented as they are, and especially if they've been in college for a long time, we already consider them like almost pros anyways, that these are still young dudes and he just lost his mind. And you could clearly tell he was rattled. Like he's not going to throw that up. Like I guarantee you Mark Few didn't say, hey, Ryan, we want the ball in your hands, but shoot it from three-quarter court with 4 seconds so maybe we get an offensive rebound, kick out, and they'll not suspect it. I mean, he lost his head.
That wasn't
lost his head. I mean, I don't think that was the play. I hope not.
Hey, I text you during the game. Craziest stat for me in this game is UCLA was 8 for 31 from 2. Think about that.
They got
8 for 31.
Yeah.
Bullied.
And 12 for 24 from 3 somehow.
Correct.
At one point in the game, there was like 6 or 7 minutes ago, they popped up this stat. Gonzaga had outscored UCLA in the paint, something like 32-4. It was insane. It was something ridiculous, like disparaging number there. I thought this game changed when Cliff Battle got ejected.
Oh, yeah.
What's your guys' take on that? Because I thought, what do you want the kid to do? His legs got undercut from him. He's trying to land when breakers fall. And it looked bad, but I think sometimes in those scenarios, it can't be black and white. There's got to be shades of gray, and you got to look at it in a whole and be like, man, if he doesn't grab onto somebody there's a chance he breaks his arm, his wrist, he really hurts himself. And it looked worse than I think what it was. I don't think it was intentional, but by the letter of the law, it was a flagrant 2 and he got ejected. And I think it changed the game like that because they definitely could have used Caleb Battle down the stretch there.
Sure could have. And look, you don't want to – you'd like to think it was intentional, and B, it's just unfortunate. I mean, because you said by the letter of the law, so they got to do, but you would wish and hope that there would be some, better discussion there to maybe, come up with a better way than losing a kid like that on something that probably wasn't intentional. But I guess it's hard to determine that, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the video. I can't find it again on Twitter. But yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was a little excessive. I agree with that. I echo everything you said, Josh.
I mean, I just think sometimes you got to take circumstances into evidence and just be like, if he doesn't grab a hold of somebody to break his fall, now we're talking about a kid that's out for the year with a broken arm.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like it. I understand it's the rule. I don't like it. What I don't like from Gonzaga, fellas, we've talked about this all year. They're 9-4. Credit to them. They've played a tough schedule again, as always. But their three-point shooting, fellas, 7 of 24 in this game. Look at all their big games. Connecticut, Kentucky, UCLA. The only one they shot decent win was the Baylor one to open the year up. I'm worried, again, I've talked about it, I'm worried about Gonzaga. And here's what they're going to do. They're going to go into WCC play. They're going to run through them, with the exception of the 2 games against St. Mary's, 3 if they meet them in the WCC final. They're going to get to 23, 24 wins. They're going to be a high-rated seeded. And we'll see what happens in March Madness. They're not going to be challenged a whole lot in the WCC. So none of this will really matter at the end of the year. But I've not been impressed with Gonzaga in the non-con. I'm not. I don't trust them at all.
I'm going to dispute a little bit. The WCC this year, I mean, obviously Gonzaga is the best team in the WCC, but it's not terrible. Like that Santa Clara team, Adama Alpha Ball's an NBA player. Washington State,
sure.
Yeah, they just lost. I can't think of the kid's name, but they just had someone get hurt. But that Washington State team's been pretty impressive this year. They're probably not going to be Gonzaga, but I think they'll be competitive with them. San Francisco, that's a really well-coached team. They're solid. You mentioned St. Mary's. That there's some teams atop this league that just aren't I think it'll be relatively competitive. I don't think it's going to be the smooth sailing it's always been for Gonzaga.
I'll concede that to you. I think it's fair, but I'm just going off history.
Yeah, sure.
This is what they do. And it's not been when they've played these really good teams, they've been in every game. They've not got blown out, but they don't shoot the 3 well. And they're so reliant on Graham Ike. 24 points in this game. Again, 8 rebounds. He had 4 turnovers, which was a little surprising for him. But he's been an All-American level in these non-con games for Gonzaga. If you take him off this team, and I know you can do this with a lot of teams, Coach. Oh, you take their best player off, then what are they? I get that. But they're so reliant on Graham Ike going out and getting them 20 and 10 each night that if he has an off night or, God forbid, he misses time due to an injury or suspension, this Gonzaga team is – I don't think they're very good at all. Now, Nimhard's been fine. I thought Caleb Battle's been really good during the non-con when he's not ejected for stuff like this. But they need Nolan Hickman to show up finally. He's not been great this non-con. Ben Gregg has been up and down. It's just – to me, they're so reliant on Graham Ike that if he doesn't go out and get them 20 and 10 each night, I really do not trust Gonzaga.
Well, the good news for them is he's going to most nights. I mean,
that's true.
He's a great player. And so he's gonna be very productive for them on most nights. Hickman has been a disappointment. I mean, he's somebody that we've talked about before. If he can, find his rhythm, be a more of a major contributor, that'll obviously help them. I do agree with Michael's take on the WCC being, that top of that conference is pretty good. And so, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to follow them to see what happens and see how they go through conference and what losses they take if and how many of them. And at the end of the day, yeah, they have some holes that they're going to have to be better at if they want to make a run in March.
Hickman this year, 17, 9, 14, 6, 10, 13, 15, 8, 9, 0, 11, 14, 6. It's just, I mean, they're fine. Some of these games where he had 15 against Indiana is good. 13 in a loss to West Virginia, 9 against Kentucky. He didn't score a point against Connecticut. They need him. They need Battle. I don't think Gonzaga is very deep. They don't shoot the 3 well. And again, yeah, you're right, Coach Ike. Most nights is going to get you 20 and 10, but we've talked about this a million times. This is a guards game. And if your guards don't step up and make shots and make plays, you can't win. You just can't. And I'm worried about Gonzaga.
Going off Hickman, just doing some quick math in my head. In the last 3 big games, Gonzaga's played the 3 losses. That's Kentucky, Connecticut, and UCLA. Hickman is, it looks like 6 of 18 from the field. That would be 3 of 13 from 3 for 15 points. They're going to need more than that out of one of their key guys.
Mm-hmm. It's just not good enough. It's not good. Yeah, and you can't rely on Dusty Stromer and Michael Ajayi to make up that production. They played a combined 50 minutes and had a goose egg combined between them points.
Yeah, and
Stromer,
Stromer, they got him that look in the corner late. It was like he was a good look, and he's a kid who definitely can hit that. If he hits that shot, we're definitely talking about this game differently. But
by the way, once again, another low-scoring game.
Yeah. Well, that's what UCLA does too. I mean, Gonzaga has played a lot
about how some of these non-cons have hit. There's been some games in the 60s that, more so than in previous years.
Yeah. Well, this one in particular, that's what UCLA wants to do. But Gonzaga, yeah, you're right. I mean, playing more low-scoring games than normal.
Happy for Mick.
Yeah. Let's talk about UCLA real quick.
Yeah.
Eric Daly, 18 points, 4 or 5 from the 3-point line. They get 12 from Kobe Johnson. He hit 3 in the second half there. Sky Clark, 11 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. That kid, I've been hard on him the last couple of years, but when he's good like that, his teams are pretty good. Tyler Bilodeau had kind of a quieter night, 7 points, 5 rebounds. But I like this UCLA team. They're balanced. They play exactly how Mick likes them to play, where they control tempo. They make plays. They're pretty big. They're not huge, but they're pretty big. And they're tough as shit. And that fits well. You talk about all the teams that come into new conferences and how they adjust. We talk about the SEC being athletic, and Texas and Oklahoma have to adjust to that. ACC used to be athletic. Well, the Big Ten's always been a grinder league. You get in these Big Ten games, and it is physical. They're in the mid-60s, low 70s, and UCLA fits the Big Ten like a hand in a glove. Their style is going to translate to this conference, the way that it's physical every night. And by the looks of it, UCLA is 11-2, 2-0 in the conference already. We may be looking at the conference champions in the first year. There's no reason
to that later when we make our predictions.
Yeah, there's no reason, DeRosa, that tells me right now UCLA can't win the Big Ten.
You guys remember some of the? I feel like I referenced this maybe 2 shows ago or something that I was on. Remember those old school not old school, those Leonard Hamilton teams when they ran Terrence Mann and they just kind of had those
from
really
5-10 years ago. Yeah.
This UCLA team kind of reminds me of that and how they're constructed. It's defense. They're just so long. You're running Eric Daly. Kobe Johnson's one of the best 3-and-D guys, maybe even in the country. Tyler Bilodeau, they're just really big. They just cover so much space. And when Sebastian Mack's playing too, he's a big guard. He didn't play well in this game, but that's another bigger guard that they're just going to suffocate teams defensively. And I think they're a really bad matchup for Purdue. Just if we're going way in the future, I think the way they can play Purdue, I think will cause substantial problems for Smith, Lawyer, and those guys.
And UCLA's making
there.
Let me pull that back up real quick.
How many guys played 10 or more minutes for UCLA?
They had 1, 2, 3,
7.
4, 5, 6,
7
dudes. Yeah, and then I can't pronounce his name. Ade Mara. He played 8. So they play a fairly deep bench there. They play 8 dudes, which is good enough. And they shoot the 3 well right now. 12 of 24 from 3.
Yeah,
they're 37.1% on the season.
Yep.
I mean, you get a team that's 4th in adjusted defense that controls tempo, and they make threes. That's a hard team to beat, man. That's a really hard team to beat. And, we talk when Mick Cronin's at Cincinnati, he's done at Cincinnati, he's done it at UCLA now. That's his style. And when he gets players that are okay playing that way, man, his teams are hard to beat. They're really hard to beat. Hey, I want to go over to it's hard to say because UCLA had a big win, but I think it was my win of the day yesterday. Memphis 87, Ole Miss 70. Absolute beatdown from the tip off. Watch this whole game in its entirety. Memphis scored first, never let up. Ole Miss never led in this game. Memphis, as bad as they look against Mississippi State last week that we talked about, Coach, I figured coming back home after a week to kind of digest that butt kicking, that they would come out ready to play, and they blitzed Mississippi from the get-go. They were the aggressor. They were attacking the paint. They were hitting threes. They used their little 2-2-1 press to slow Mississippi down and confuse them. They were hitting the backboard. They blitzed Ole Miss yesterday and never let up for a big-time 17-point victory. we've talked about this since Maui. I really enjoy this Memphis team. I think, honestly, they're one of my favorite teams in the country to watch, especially when that trio of guards get going. Haggerty, 17, Colby Rogers, 28. Tyrese only had 4, but he didn't need to do a whole bunch when the other 2 were going off yesterday. They get their 2 big men, Musa Cisse, 13, Dane Danger with 16. When Memphis plays like this, man, they are a legit threat to make the second weekend and maybe make a run beyond that. I really love watching this Memphis team when they're playing like this.
I remember talking to you guys after Maui that there's going to be games where this kid Rogers goes off and hits 6 or 7 threes. And here was the game. He's just capable. And you're right. They don't need all 3 of those guys to score 20. And that's hard to do, right? I mean, get 3 guards to score 20 every night. But when 2 of the 3 of them play really well, and that's when they're going to be really good. If all 3 of them are playing really well, they're going to compete with almost anybody. They're just 3 experienced, talented guards, and their bigs contributed yesterday. They all threw a great start, and they held Mississippi to 70, and they blew them out. I mean, it's a heck of a win for Penny and Memphis. Yeah, Josh, they're tough.
They're real good, DeRosa. I know you had
your down. They're not going to lose many in the American either.
DeRosa, I know, we talked about it after Maui. You've always kind of been hesitant on Memphis, but, they played a really good schedule, and they've got 3 losses. I think you can excuse all 3 in a way. I mean, they did get blown out in all 3 is the concerning thing, but, I mean, you played number 1 Auburn, who's just a juggernaut. You played them a 14-point game in the Maui final. Arkansas State, you can kind of forgive because Arkansas State's really good. They've got D1 transfer, like major talent. And the Mississippi State's really good. And maybe they got caught looking ahead to Christmas break and all that. But they played a good schedule. They got wins over Ole Miss, Virginia, Clemson, Michigan State, Connecticut. Missouri looks good. I mean, they've built a good resume. And I think this Memphis team could be dangerous, DeRosa.
Yeah, I definitely think they have like the ceiling to be dangerous, if you guys have definitely hit on. And Coach mentioned it. The American is not like great this year. It's really Memphis, and it's Memphis. They're probably going to lose a couple games that they should win. Like I think in North Texas is going to definitely just get them at some point. That's a really well coached team. I like the program they run there. They'll get them at some point. They'll probably lose another game that you'll just be like, okay, like maybe a Tulane or something will find them. But yeah, the ceiling is definitely there. Coach mentioned it with a guy like Colby Rogers. Tyrese Hunter didn't have a good game this game, like at all, and they still won pretty handily. PJ Haggerty was doing just about everything as one of, I believe he was the Kyle Macy Freshman of the Year last year. They just have dudes, and Dane Danger off the bench was really good in this game. Musa Cisse had one tip jam, I remember when I was watching this game, that like really like maybe jump out of my seat, like, okay, I did not see that coming. They have the ceiling. I'm definitely a little hesitant to like, oh yeah, this team's going to make a run. It would not surprise me if Memphis is the team that everyone picks to make the Sweet 16, and then they lose a game in the round of 64 that they shouldn't. Like that definitely could happen, but I think they are the best team in the American. They're probably going to win the league, both regular season and maybe even the tournament. That's way far away. We'll talk about tournaments way later, but they're the best team in this league. And I'm not going to lie. I remember I had this take earlier, and I stand by it. I don't think Ole Miss is a tournament team. I don't.
Okay, we have time to talk about Ole Miss. I think they're going to make tournament, but there are concerns with that Ole Miss team that do worry me.
I think Memphis could go be like 27-6.
Okay,
absolutely.
So Ken Palm has them winning every game in conference from here on out.
It should be an upset if they lose.
Yeah, which would put them at what, like 27-3. So
I'm calling a shot here. They only play North Texas once. That game Sunday, January 5th. It's Memphis
next Sunday. Yeah,
North Texas going to win that game
at Memphis.
I'll call my shot now.
I'll take Memphis if it's at Memphis.
I think their first couple games in conference are their biggest challenge. Away, they play Thursday, January 2nd at Florida Atlantic. They play home next Sunday against North Texas. They've got home at Eastern Carolina, which isn't great, but it's not terrible. Away to Temple, away to Charlotte, home against Wichita State, and then the home against UAB. They get through that unscathed, I think they're running the table. I just
too. They certainly have the talent too. And
I just seen something before we went on air about Penny was on Field of 68 after dark last night, I think it was. And he was talking about like, hey man, I've been at this for 7 years. When I came in, I didn't know nothing. and we were learning on the fly. And he was basically insinuating that all the assistants he had were kind of like, he would go on a player and then they could run to one of his assistants and they would baby him. And so it kind of undermined his power. And he said, I had to just finally said, I've learned through experience and hardship. He said, all the criticism I would get was fair. So I never had a problem with criticism, because if you said that like we sucked or I wasn't doing a good job, then I agree with you because we weren't. But he had basically look at himself in the mirror over the summer, realized he had to make a change. He's been in this a while. He's learned a lot. Fired all them assistant coaches. We even talked about it in the summer, like what the hell is going on with Memphis? But he brought in Mike Davis. He brought in Nolan Smith, guys who he feels comfortable with, allow him to be him. And now he's got the players to buy in. So he even said that like the players now, instead of like, if I get on them and they can run the assistants as like a soft landing spot, there's no soft landing spot. They have to come talk to me now. And I have this like better relationship with them. They feel like they can trust me, and I feel like I could finally trust all the guys on the team. The drama is pretty much cut out and all that. And you're seeing a product. And I appreciate the hell of Penny for saying that and just being honest. He took ownership for stuff that went on. He said any criticism that was lobbied against him and them was completely fair, and he realized he had to make a change, and he's learning and growing. I loved Penny Hardaway as a kid when he played for the Orlando Magic. I'm kind of always secretly rooting for him in Memphis because of that. But I love that quote. A lot of ownership was fessed up last night in that Field of 68 after dark.
I'm sure the administrators appreciated it, and maybe even his team appreciated it. Self-awareness is a difficult thing for people, and credit to him for being vulnerable enough to speak out about it and to take the accountability. And I think a lot of people respect that when he did it, and all of us included, probably.
Yeah. DeRosa, real quick, I want to hear your point on Ole Miss, because I think we have the same thing. Go ahead and hear yours first. What's your concern about Ole Miss?
I have a lot of concerns. I don't think this is a tournament team. They beat BYU. That's their like big win in the non-conference. That's why they ended up being ranked, but they haven't really challenged themselves. And I don't know if they have a legitimate post player. That's number one. In the league like the SEC, you're going to need someone like that. Like Mikhail Brown-Jones, who was ejected in this game, but he's like 6'8". Malik Dia is like, I believe he's also 6'8" and was kind of like the athlete for that Belmont team last year in the Missouri Valley. But like, to the SEC, that's a different level of athleticism. Sean Padula, I don't think is a very good on-ball defender. Dre Davis just hasn't really done a lot this year, and I just kind of think he was one of those guys that was really elevated by Shaheen Holloway, that I thought he was kind of an overrated transfer personally. Definitely there is room for me to be wrong about that still. He could prove me wrong, and I'd tip my hat if he does, but yeah, I don't think this Ole Miss team is nearly as talented as people think they are. I don't think they fit together nearly as well as people think they do. I don't think their defense translates well to the SEC really at all. And we've talked about how dominant the SEC is, that some teams are going to fall. And I don't think Ole Miss is going to continue to force the 7th most turnovers in the country in the SEC. And I think their defense really thrives on that I think when they play teams that are more athletic, they're able to pressure them. I think they're going to be able to take them. And yeah, I think the SEC being so strong, someone's going to have to fall. And I think Ole Miss is the number one candidate for me for a team that's just going to get beat by the SEC.
Completely agree with all that. And I'll even add on to this. Ole Miss is good when they can establish kind of their toughness early. You can't out tough Memphis. Memphis punched them in the mouth. Ole Miss just didn't have the horses to come back. Ole Miss will be good when they can play, like, let's say in Arkansas, who's younger, or Kentucky or whatever, and they can establish their physicality first. Then they can wear a team down. If they play a team that's just as tough or tougher, I don't think they have the horses. They're not very big, to your point. The
great hammer, team, bad nail.
Exactly. Perfect analysis. And look, their conference slate, Georgia, Arkansas, LSU, Alabama, Mississippi State, Texas A&M's their first 6. So we'll find out a lot about Ole Miss coming up. Let's go out to the Mountain West here real quick. Utah State getting a big win, another big win, back-to-back weekends. They beat St. Mary's last week. They come back yesterday, beat San Diego State in a close game on the road, 67-66. Mason Falslev, MVP according to KenPom, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 steals in this game. They got 17 from Ian Martinez, 11 from Dayton Albury, and then 14 from Tucker Anderson off the bench, who went 4 of 7 from 3. Utah State's never like a sexy team, but they're every year, it seems like, They're one of those teams from the Valley that has really good records, makes NCAA tournament, and depending on if they make threes or not, could pull an upset or win a game or two. This is another really good team, Coach. 12-1 now.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, they got off to an incredible start. And I think they have a chance to be another team that we talk about with a lot of wins, right? A lot of wins when it comes to March and seeding and all that other stuff, like Memphis. I mean, Gonzaga, worried about what they're going to do in their league. Well, these teams are going to have a lot of wins.
Yep. DeRosa, San Diego State, they've played a good schedule, right? Gonzaga, Creighton, Oregon, Houston, Utah State at this point, and they're going to play in another pretty good Mountain West Conference. The problem is the 3 losses. They've not scored over 70. 67 to Gonzaga, 68 to Oregon, 66 to Utah State. And you look at the discrepancy between offense and defense. Offense, they're rated 85th in efficiency. Defensively, as always with Dutcher's teams, they're 9th. So they play really good defense, but when it gets nut-cutting time and they got to produce some points, I don't trust them to do that. If they can keep the game in the mid to low 60s, they've always got a chance to win. But they're going to start – in order to win some of these bigger games in the Mountain West and they get an NCAA and win a game or two, they got to find ways to get to 70. And I don't know if they can do it.
We're going to talk about San Diego State later because I still think they're fine, frankly. They definitely don't have that ceiling you mentioned. They don't have that offensive spark. But, I mean, they were able to hold a Creighton offense. I believe that was the game Kalkbrenner missed. I'm
53.
Yeah. Oh, Kalkbrenner actually played in that game. That was a game Ashworth missed to 53. Yeah. They were just smothering in that game. They beat Houston. They've won, they beat Cal too. They smoked Cal. But I want to talk about this Utah State team. I watched this game. They got down 18 early, and I went back. I watched the condensed highlights. So I haven't watched the full game, just full disclosure. They went down 18 early. Then they got down again late in, I believe they got down 8 late. About a minute and a half left, and they found a way to win this game. This is a really well-coached team. You mentioned Utah State and how they've been just solid. They're not the team that's really going to wow you, but they just kind of find ways to win, and their team in March that we're talking about can win a game. They've had 4 coaches in 5 years. Ryan Odom, Craig Smith, Danny Sprinkle, who's now at Washington, and then Jared Calhoun, who came over from Youngstown State. It's just a really solid program. They hire good coaches, and the group they have this year really impressed me. Just when I went back, research Mountain West, I thought this team was underrated. They just find ways to get these guys to excel in their roles. Dayton Albury was a guy who really impressed me. Just going back, I watched tape on him and was like, okay, this kid can play really quick guard. Was at Queens last year, transferred up. It's definitely a steep jump in competition, but he's been solid. Only plays 60 minutes a game after averaging 17 points last year. Takes the ego out of it. He's only averaging 5 points a game this year, but 51% from the field, 57% from 3. He's not an awesome shooter. It's not a ton of volume, but he's hitting shots. And in this game had 11 and 5, very efficient, and just found ways to kind of create because he's just so athletic. We've lost Josh. That's tough. I really like the way this team is constructed. Tucker Anderson is another guy. I believe he was on he was at Central Arkansas, whatever league they're in. He was on that league's all first team, and he hasn't done much this year, but he had 2 really late threes in this game. Just catch, shoot. And the way they space the floor in transition, the offensive principles they have, really solid. Coach Calhoun, when he was at Youngstown State, I believe was one of their offense was, I think it was second or something in non-adjusted. So not adjusted for competition, but raw offensive efficiency. They just find ways to score, really creative. Some of the back cuts they had in this game were really impressive. There was one play, Drake Allen, I believe it was, off an inbound. There was getting nothing. He fakes this way, cuts backdoor, wide open layup against a much bigger defender. They just find ways to score, really creative offensively. I really like this team. I think they're constructed really well. I think they can win a game in the tournament, frankly. I really buy this team.
It's amazing what that job has become, like you said. I mean, it's built to win. I mean, and they've won consistently. They've won with different, all these different coaches. And, the top half of that league is really tough. And I know when we talk about league, previews or whatever, our predictions coming up, we'll talk more about it. But Michael, I think you did a really good job of breaking them down and analyzing that. And I think they could win a game in March too. Josh, we got you back.
I am so sorry. Yeah, my cat decided to unplug my PC, and I'm about ready to kill her. So
no, don't do that.
PETA, please do not come after me.
He's just kidding.
But no, yeah, of course, just kidding, of course. I'm trying to regain my composure here, but
yeah, we just talked about the Mountain West, Utah State. The depth of it and the top half of the league, and and Michael made a great point. He thinks they can win the game in March. So I do too.
Veteran-led team too. That's another note I wanted to hit. Sorry,
that matters. It definitely matters.
Mason Falslev, Ian Martinez, Dexter O'Connell. These are experienced guys. Drake Allen, experienced. I like this team a lot. I think when we look back, they should be one of the teams we talk about as like top, maybe not 5, but like a top 10 winner of the transfer portal. They found guys that fit their system, that fit their vision. And I really like the way this roster is constructed. I think this team could win a game of the tournament as coach.
Especially after losing a guy like Lamont Butler to rebuild that team as far as San Diego State did. I tell you what, let's show some love here because we do have some games this upcoming week. We're talking a lot about conference play. Conference play might as well say officially is about to start around the league. We'll have the Big 12 beginning on Tuesday and Wednesday. The Big East is back in action. Big 10, SEC begins next weekend. So we got a lot of conference stuff to talk about finally, which I can't believe we've already here where it feels like the first 2 months of the season just flown by. It's already conference time. But it is time. Let's show some love to our new sponsor this year that came on board. And we're talking about our friends over at W Energy. W is a clean energy drink that is made to give you focus with no crash, jitters, or angst like other energy drinks. They have no maltodextrin fillers and don't use artificial dyes. W contains vitamins, amino acids, a nootropic, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. Their product is made in the USA in an FDA-inspected facility that strictly adheres to GMP manufacturing guidelines. If you go to www.w.gg now, place an order, use the promo code ECB10 at checkout, you're going to get 10% off of your order. We talk about it every show. I love it. I've really enjoyed it. Get it the shaker, put the mix in. It's real easy to do. Tastes phenomenal. They have some really good flavors over there. And it does kind of give you the boost you need to whether you're working, you're podcasting, watching games. It helps you lock in without all the weird crash and the jitters like it talks about. So go use the promo code ECB10 now at checkout over at www.w.gg. Place your order, use that code, you're going to get 10% off your order. We appreciate the hell out of W coming on board this year with us. Gentlemen, we talked about some conference play. This Tuesday, the Big 12 officially starts to kick things off here, and I think it's apropos. If you talk to longtime original podcast host with me, one of my best friends since growing up, Tyler Cook, is a longtime Kansas Jayhawk fan. And he will tell you, since the West Virginia Mountaineers joined the Big 12, they have been his biggest bugaboo team. There for a long time, when Huggy Bear was there, Kansas lost every year going to West Virginia. Then when they'd come back to Fog Allen, Kansas would win most, but West Virginia would always keep it close. We've talked about West Virginia has been very surprising this year. They've been pretty good. 48th in Ken Palm, only 2 losses, both of them pretty Pittsburgh beat the hell out of them in the backyard brawl. Louisville beat them out there in the battle for Atlantis in overtime. They got wins over Gonzaga, Arizona. The Georgetown win is looking a lot better day by day, DeRosa, since your Hoyas are looking pretty good now. And West Virginia, I think, is a balanced team. Do they have enough to go into Fog Allen and open Big 12 play up with a massive statement win on Tuesday?
No. I think it's too tough of a spot in an opening game. I think that Big 12 is going to be very fun to watch. I think West Virginia will be competitive for sure in the league. I just think it's a tall ask on Tuesday to win in that place to start the league. If they do, boy, that would be resounding. that would certainly make everybody kind of sit up and see what's going to happen. But I'm really excited for the Big 12, especially with a couple of the new additions to it. Some of these games are going to be really, really fun to watch. That's definitely one to keep an eye on early, but I think Kansas will handle business and get out of the gate. I'd be shocked if they didn't.
The two things that give me hope, DeRosa, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The two things that give me hope for West Virginia are Tucker DeVries. I don't think Kansas has a matchup for him. And Javon Small has been phenomenal this year playing the point
On the
guard
DeVries
spot.
point quickly, one, he hasn't played the last 3 games with a shoulder injury.
Mhm.
West Virginia's been pretty coy about his status, so we don't know, but I'm not expecting him to play. I don't think he plays in this game.
Okay.
That is just a guess. Like I have no inside information. I'm just guessing, but I don't think he plays in this game. And I don't, because of that, I am with Coach on this one. I think this is Kansas by TKO. And even if he played, frankly, I think KJ Adams is a difficult matchup for him. But yeah, I especially if he's not 100% healthy, if he's playing with that busted shoulder. He got hurt apparently right after the Georgetown game too. But yeah, I got Kansas in this one by TKO.
Okay, so that's fair. I completely forgot about Tucker being out, to be honest. And to be fair, their last couple since the Georgetown win, North Carolina Central, Bethune-Cookman, Mercyhurst, not really 3 games that most people want to pay attention to if we're just being honest. But so I look at it 2 ways. If he can play, I think he's such a gamer. Being at Kansas, he'll try to play. But how do I want to say this? I think Kansas wins this game regardless. But, man, if they cannot keep Javon Small in front of them the way that dude gets downhill, and you let guys like Sincere Harris has been okay. He's not been great, but he's been good. You let some of them get going. West Virginia plays really tough defense. They're 7th in effective field goal defense. Kansas, we know they've had issues shooting the ball at times. If they don't get Zeke Mayo going, if they don't get DeJuan Harris, it's got to make shots when he has them. I worry about David Coit. The dude's 5'11" and sometimes thinks he's like this big heat check guy and can shoot them out of good possessions. The thing I think Kansas is going to dominate is Hunter Dickinson because West Virginia doesn't have the size to match up. If I'm West Virginia, I'm playing zone and daring Kansas to beat me from outside. I'm not letting Dickinson go one-on-one. Get the bigs I do have in foul trouble. I'm daring them. I'm daring DeJuan Harris to make threes. I'm daring AJ Storr to prove he can continue to be consistent. I'm going zone and saying just beat me from outside. Kansas, okay, 35%, so right about that average line that we look for. And I'm daring them. I'm not playing man-to-man against them. I'm going zone and I'm daring them to shoot, but regardless, I think they have Hunter Dickinson and West Virginia doesn't have anybody to stop them. So I think Kansas wins. But Coach, if you were West Virginia and Darren DeVries, would you not just say play zone and see what happens?
Yeah. Well, look, the status of the kid makes a huge difference. I mean, right? I mean, he's a huge key to the game. I mean, if you don't have him and you do have him. So yeah, you're going to have to play some zone. There's no question about it. And you got to hope that you get some misses early. You can rebound the ball, take the crowd kind of out of it early, and keep that game as close as you can, as long as you can. And if he plays and is healthy enough to contribute, well, then maybe down the last 10 minutes you have a chance. If Kansas, shoots the ball decent against the zone, then you get pulled out of it, and you got to guard that kid one-on-one and the block. You got a whole bunch of issues. So yeah, but Josh, I think you have to. And you have to mix it up and mix it in early.
Yeah, and I think I'd even throw a little 2-2-1 just to slow them down, make them think. Yeah. Because we've seen in games like when we talked about Memphis and Ole Miss, for whatever reason, or like when Kentucky went 1-3-1 against Gonzaga, completely flustered them. When teams get pressed or these kind of zones or traps you don't see a whole lot of, even these experienced dudes, it takes their brain a minute to process it. And I just think the more you can slow Kansas down in the half court, the better. Make them rush in the shot clock. If I'm West Virginia, I'm mixing a 2-2-1 back to a 2-3, stay in my 2-3 as long as I can, and just hope you make shots and Kansas doesn't. But I think we all got Kansas winning this game. Let's go to the Big East. Also on New Year's Eve on Tuesday, you have, I would say, one of the more disappointing teams so far in the country, Creighton at 8-5, and they're playing host to St. John's, DeRosa. I know the Big East is kind of your forte. We know how good Creighton is when they're at home. When they're playing at home, that's a completely different team than when they're at a neutral site or when they're on the road. St. John's been pretty good this year. Creighton has not. What's your outlook on this one on New Year's Eve?
Yeah, St. John's is a team I still haven't fully seen it yet. Like, I haven't seen that game where I'm like, okay, this St. John's team looks amazing. They've had a couple games where they've shown the flashes of what they can be, but they haven't put together that full 40-minute performance. I think this is a spot where they can. I think the way they match up with Creighton is excellent. The way Georgetown beat Creighton was they kind of put Micah Peavy on Stephen Ashworth and just said, make him fluster him, make him just get him out of a rhythm. I don't think there are many other Big East teams that can do that. St. John's can.
Yeah,
Davon
Smith, yeah.
Crazy athlete. Kadari Richmond has that same length. Like, they just have RJ Lewis, incredible athlete again. They have so many of those guys they can throw on Ashworth, and Creighton doesn't have any creators outside of Ashworth and Kalkbrenner. And if Ashworth can't get the ball to Kalkbrenner, because none of those other guys can really throw a post-entry pass, you take them both out of the game. If you take Ashworth out of the game, you can almost take both out of the game if you have a guy good enough to do it. PV is one of those guys. St. John's is three of those guys. This is a really good matchup for St. John's. You mentioned how good Creighton is at home. That's the only thing that gives me some pause here. But I think Creighton. I think the only way Creighton wins is if Kalkbrenner, you got to get him going early, and you got to get Zuby in foul trouble early, because Vince Iwuchukwu has been fine, but I think he's a guy that Kalkbrenner could really take advantage of. But if St. John's able, I think we'll learn a lot about this game in the first 2 minutes. If St. John's sets their tempo the way they want to play, if this feels like a St. John's game early, I think they can kill Creighton. And if Creighton can get Kalkbrenner going early, I think they'll stay alive. But yeah, I got St. John's in this one. I think they match up incredibly well.
Coach, losing Pop Isaacs, coming off that big time game against Kansas too, and losing him for the year, has really, it felt like, almost done Creighton in to a lot of DeRosa's points. You look at their offensive stats, Creighton over the last 10 plus years has been an incredible offensive team. They're 268th in turnover percentage on the offensive end. Means they're throwing the ball all over the place. They don't get offensive rebounds. They're 304th in offensive rebound percentage. They're not getting to the foul line a lot. You look at their free throw attempts to field goal attempts, they're 375 in the nation at that. They're shooting okay from three, that 35% we always talk about average. They're really good inside the paint, but a lot of that's to do with Kalkbrenner. They turn the ball over. They shoot a lot of threes. That's kind of always been their style. But if they're not hitting, Coach, I think I'm with DeRosa. I think St. John's goes in there and gets a pretty big win. I think defensively they can really bother Ashworth. They turn the ball over as is. If Creighton doesn't hit 10 or more threes in this game, I don't think they can win this.
Yeah, I think we're going to go on a clean sweep here on a road win for the Johnnies. I like both of you guys' analysis and points. Losing Isaacs is a crushing blow because he's another guy that can handle the ball as well.
And he's a scorer.
I know, but you losing that ball handling, though, is the problem for them.
Of course,
that's why the field percentage is so ridiculous. But yeah, he's a good player. I mean, you lose good players, and look at Xavier. We talked about that. It's just really hard. So yeah, and I think Johns has those guys to bother the kid, and that seems to be right now. You watch that on tape. Coach Pitino watched that game, what PV did to Ashworth, and he's going to have the same game plan. And I think St. John's gets the win too.
Clean sweep for the Johnnies. We'll see. That's a tough building to go into, but
agreed.
Any team that shoots a bunch of threes and doesn't shoot a great percentage and turn the ball over at that rate really scares me. So,
and they don't turn other teams over too.
No, they don't. I think that's prime for a New Year's Eve celebration for Rick Pitino and the Johnnies out there in Nebraska. Well, let's stay in the Big East. Well, also on New Year's Eve on Tuesday, we have Marquette going into Providence. Now, the only reason I think this is of note, Providence has not been good. DeRosa, you know that better than we do. 7-6. They've really struggled. They've played some good teams like Oklahoma. I mean, for whatever you think about Indiana still has talent. Rhode Island has been a pretty good team. The Bonnies, they've lost St. John. So their losses aren't on the surface bad losses. They just don't have any good wins outside of BYU, really. And also, though, they're at the AMP. That's a tough building to go and try to get a win in. So when you look at Marquette trying to go on the road in a tough environment on New Year's Eve when you got a bunch of New Englanders ready to party, is it still Marquette by a lot, or does Providence at home, do they find magic in the AMP?
I think Marquette is going to find a way. They're going to handle the ball well, and I think they're going to find a way to turn Providence over. It's just a matter of can Providence – one thing that Providence does in some of these big games and why the home court is – I mean, the home court is definitely something. But another note is when Providence – they shoot a ton of threes, and when they're hitting shots, it's hard to beat a team that is shooting 50% from three. Believe it or not. Just throwing something out there. I'll say it.
Yeah, of course.
But one thing with Providence and why I really don't like this team this year, and their defense has been very good to their credit. They don't force a ton of turnovers, but everything else they do defensively, they're just really solid on that end. But Kim English talks about wanting to speed up the game, wanting to play fast, wanting to do all this sort of stuff and shoot a ton of threes. And they do shoot a ton of threes. They shoot the 27th most threes per shot attempt in the country, but they only shoot threes at a 34% clip. They're not a great shooting team. Bensley Joseph is a good shooter, but other than that, there's no one that I'm like, when you like see wide open look that you're screaming, oh crap. Like you're just like, oh, not him. Joseph can hit him. Pierre can hit him, but there's no one like that. It's like that one guy where he's just going like 6 or 7 on a night. If you leave him open, you're just like, oh crap. Like a Kobe Rogers. But they play really slow, a really slow paced team. They don't have that sort of identity that their coach wants. And another note is, I don't know the status of Bryce Hopkins.
Played 3 games. Last couple.
Yeah. Then is he coming back? He re-aggravated something with his knee. We don't know how serious it is. We don't know if he's going to play again this year. If he plays immediately, there's just nothing. His situation's another one that's really coy. We just don't know anything about it. But yeah, I got Marquette. I don't like this Providence team this year.
So it's interesting, right? We're going to all three of us pick road league.
I don't like.
I know that's why I said it. It's it just goes to show you. But I just think there's enough talent discrepancy there that Marquette and they have an elite player. I think Marquette gets the win too. That's 2-2. We all agree on the road in the Big East on New Year's Eve. So I'd be anxious to see if the road teams get it done.
Well, here's what I'll say about Providence real quick. And I'm with you. I'm going Marquette as well. I am, and especially until they get Hopkins back, hopefully fully healthy and can play the rest of the year. The one dude I am very disappointed in, having watched him a lot at Georgia, is Jabir Abdul-Rahim. That dude at Georgia, he's like 6'7", 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", whatever he is. I'll look it up real quick. 6'8". He is a stretch 4 at the best terms. Shoots a ton of threes at Georgia, would make clutch shots, would dig in for some rebounds. So far at Providence, he's had 3 double-figure games. He was the MVP in their win against BYU, where he went 4-7 from three-point line. But he is not shooting the ball well. He's not really contributing anything off the bench. In order for Providence to win games like this, I think Jabir Abdul-Rahim has to be Georgia version of him because he gives them something that a lot of teams have a hard time guarding, which is a stretch 4. And if he's not good in games like this, I mean, look at Providence. They got Marquette, and then they got to go away to Connecticut, and then Butler. And that's just – I need to see the real Jabir Abdul-Rahim in order for Providence to start winning some games. If not, yeah, Marquette's going to roll in this game, I think. There's
not a lot of depth to Jabir Abdul-Rahim's game. He's a good shooter when he's hitting.
But he's got to hit, too.
He's 17 of 57 from 3 this year. But he's taken 7 twos in 13 games. He's a shooter. That's what he does.
That's all he is. But when I seen him at Georgia, he would get rolling, man. He'd give you 20 a night.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a style of play or confidence or whatever it is, but I want to see the real Jabir Abdul-Rahim finally show up to give them a chance. Let's move to ACC. This is on New Year's Day. This will be one of the first games of 2025 in the ACC. Louisville plays host to North Carolina. The only time they'll see North Carolina this year. They've already played Duke at home. We've talked about this Louisville schedule. They survived, and I mean survived, Eastern Kentucky yesterday, winning basically at the buzzer there. Noah Waterman getting the game-winning bucket. But I still like this Louisville team, Coach. North Carolina got their big win last week against UCLA. I don't know if that's enough turnaround. Maybe it is. When you look at Carolina going into Louisville on Wednesday, what do you see?
Boy, it's another just huge early season league game for both teams for different reasons. Is Carolina kind of righted to ship a little bit and heading into the league play with a chance to be one of the top 4 teams, or are they going to keep showing some warts where they struggle and become more towards the middle of the pack? And then you got Louisville, who obviously is trying to make this jump. They've got 8 wins already, right? 8-5.
Yep.
So they're trying to make this jump with what Pat has done, and been close in some and struggled in a couple, and lose the kid again, an injury that again affects them tremendously. So this is going to be a really fun and intriguing game for me to watch. I really think Carolina is going to struggle here on the road. I think Louisville is going to get them. I'm not going to keep picking all these road teams in conference games because it's just not going to happen. So I'm taking Louisville.
DeRosa, I'm with him. I'm going Louisville. They're third in 3-point attempts to field goal attempts. We know that. They play a fast style for the most part. I mean, it's not lightning fast, but they want to get up and down. They want to take a bunch of threes. 3-point percentage has not been good, but we've seen in games like Kentucky where they hit a bunch of them. If they can see them go in early, they've got a real chance. Keep in mind, they had Duke down for a lot of that game until Duke rallied with the final 10 minutes and was able to get the lead and pull away. That's because Louisville hit a bunch of threes in the first half. I think if they can get Carolina down, now keep in mind too, Carolina loves finding themselves down 15 or more and then rallying. They've done that in so many games this year already. They finally got the one against UCLA last week. But I think if Louisville can keep the pace going, get their threes to fall, Terrence Edwards coming off a 20-point game. We've talked about how good Chucky Hepburn's been. Ryan Smith needs to be good. He's not been great, but he still has the potential to go off in a game. They've got pieces. I like Louisville in this game, and I think this is a game that's played up in the upper 90s. Both these teams want to get up and down and shoot a bunch. Neither have tremendous size as far as interior play. I think you'll see 45 combined threes in a game played in the 90s, and I think Louisville gets a big-time win to boost their ACC resume to put them at 2-1.
Yeah, the thing I'm most confident in this game is we're getting up and down the court. That's one thing. I'm very confident in. Yeah. I don't have a good feel for this game. I don't feel like I have a good read on either of these teams. I'm not confident in it. I was going to pick Louisville just because they're at home. You guys both picked Louisville, though. So I'm going to pick UNC. I don't know. I don't have a great feel for this game. I think their guards can make a difference.
I think that's fair. I think this will be a very entertaining game, though. If you like that kind of, I think if you like that kind of video game style basketball where it's a lot of threes, high tempo, good guard play, probably a lot of turnovers, but that video game style, I think this is the game you want to watch on New Year's Day because I think this will be a real classic to watch. I like Louisville. I still like Louisville. And their schedule in the ACC, we've talked about ACC being down. They get North Carolina. They don't have to play either one of those Duke, Carolina again till the ACC tournament. They get Virginia and Clemson and Pitt. Those are 3 really tough games, but I like Louisville, man. I like this team. They got to hit their threes. That's all it boils down to. They hit them early, they got a chance to win. If not, I don't know where the points are coming from. Is there anything else in the early week? I kind of looked at the schedule. Anything else that stand out you guys want to mention real quick?
I think we've touched on the things that are kind of a lot of people are going to be watching and intrigued about.
Yeah.
So, I'm anxious for some of these games. I'm anxious for the leagues to really hit their stride, even though, some of them have played a couple games already. But it's going to get high. These incredible matchups coming in the Big 12 and the Big East and the SEC. I mean, here we go.
Yeah.
So let's do. Now that we can say conference play is officially beginning, I know like Kentucky plays Brown. That's their final one. The next week over the weekend, they'll start SEC play. We're saying a conference play across the country officially begins now. So we can talk about this. Now that we've had basically 2 months of action in front of us and data to consume, we're going to go through the Power 6. And we're counting the Mountain West now as a Power 6 because there is no Pac-12. Let's go down the line. We'll give our conference winners. And then if you want to throw in a team to kind of maybe a dark horse to watch, we can do that. We will start in the ACC since we just got done talking about it. I think the easy answer for all of this is Duke. Does anybody see a team besides Duke win in the ACC?
No.
I don't even have a dark horse. Duke.
So I think we all go Duke. I will give a dark horse, and I'll stay with Louisville. I just think that if they can put this together in their tempo and the way they shoot, the conference is not great. I think Louisville, if there was a dark horse, I think Louisville can win the conference.
I don't think anybody can win the conference but Duke, but I think Clemson will finish up in the top 3, 4.
I think
Yeah,
that's
you know
fair.
what? I'll throw a similar team like that. I'm taking way from the bottom that could finish in that sort of range that no one's talking about. If Notre Dame gets Marcus Burton healthy quickly, I think they can. I think they're
I
going to be
love
solid.
that pick. I thought you were going to say Pitt, to be honest. I thought you were going to say Pitt. I love the Notre Dame shout, though. I love the Notre Dame shout.
While you're shouting Notre Dame, how about their guards and their women's team?
Phenomenal, man.
Hidalgo and Miles. They are unbelievable.
They're phenomenal.
The women's team. They're definitely a team that especially when they play like big games, like the big women's games. Those are fun. They're definitely a team. I got to get it. I got to get
those two are must watch when they're playing big games like that. They put on a show.
Let's go over to the conference the last few years. It's been widely considered the best conference by and large, but they'll be number 2 this year, and that's the Big 12. This feels like a wide open Big 12 race to me. I know you can say Kansas and Houston, Cincinnati, maybe if Baylor gets their stuff together. When you guys look at the Big 12, at the end of the day, who's going to win the Big 12 regular season conference?
I am going to Iowa State.
Oh, okay. I like it.
To win the Big 12. My look, Kelvin, U of H, I'll be pulling for them and hoping they get it done. But I think I'm hesitant to give them the regular season. I don't know if Kansas is going to. I think Iowa State's going to be the most consistent. The teams are going to take some L's. They're not going to be 17-1. But I think Iowa State at the end is the one standing either a tie for first or first alone.
I'm with Coach. I got Iowa State too.
Wow.
I thought I was going to be the only one picking the Cyclones, but they're just so solid. They're just one of those teams that when it comes down to late game execution, I don't think they're going to make crazy mistakes. And in some of these close games, that's enough for me to pick them. I really like these guards. Keyshawn Gilbert's one of my favorite players in the country. I love his toughness. I just love the way he plays the game. They're so good inside the arc. They're controlling that. And defensively, they have a true identity. They force a ton of turnovers. They don't turn the ball over. They won't make a ton of mistakes. They'll get extra possessions. They do a lot of the things that the teams that I love. I got the Cyclones.
Man, we're gonna go sweep again.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, here's why I think Iowa State. For all the reasons you guys mentioned, I love their guard play, Keyshawn Gilbert, Taman Lempsey. I love Milan. I can never say his name. Momcilovic. Yeah. They play defense. Defense is always going to keep you in games, but they've got an incredible offense this year. Is the biggest difference why I buy Iowa State. The other thing, you look at the conference slate, they're big games in the conference and all big games like Baylor, Kansas, and all. They're spread out. Like they play Baylor January 4th, and then they don't play Kansas till the 15th, and they play West Virginia the 18th, and then they don't play another really tough one again for a while. Everybody's is spread out. Iowa State's spread out. Kansas and Houston, their final 3 or 4 games are brutal. Kansas, final 3 games, home Texas Tech, away Houston, home Arizona. You look at Houston, their final 6 games, at Arizona State, home Iowa State, away Texas Tech, home Cincinnati, home Kansas, away Baylor. I like Iowa State, how their schedule breaks out.
It matters.
It does matter.
Unbalanced leagues, the schedule is so important.
It does. Kansas and Houston have to play gauntlets to end the year. Iowa State gets these teams kind of spread out. I love Iowa State, and I think they even win the league by 2 games because of it. I like Iowa.
Great point.
I think Iowa State schedule breaks in their favor. Let's go to the Big Ten. I think this one is so wide open. We've talked about UCLA and Purdue and Michigan State and all those. DeRosa, I know you picked Oregon in our magazine at the preseason here. Are you sticking with the Ducks, or has your mind changed?
The loss to UCLA, I think, could definitely burn late season, especially because they were at home when they lost that game. But they've done nothing that is going to change my opinion. I still love this team. I'm riding to the end of the sunset with the Ducks. Quack, quack. Dana Altman, Jackson Shelstead, take me to the moon. We're going.
You're like Lee Corso sticking with Texas to win the national title.
I love it though, man. Staying true.
I'm going with the 4 letters. UCLA. That's been my team from the start here. They've done nothing for me to change that. I love Mick, how they play, and but I think it again. Another Oregon could win it. Purdue could win it. It's going to be a battle. But I like UCLA, and my sleeper to make a run up the ladder of the standings is my boy at State College, and I'll take Penn State to be a top 5 or 6 team in the Big Ten after being picked 17th by most people.
I love it. So I think the conference comes down to February 28th. It's a Friday night game, and that is Purdue hosting UCLA. I think it'll come down to that game. The winner takes conference, and my mind's been changed because I'm going UCLA after I've seen what I've seen. Just defensively, they're good. I like their size. I like the way that they can shoot the ball now. I think UCLA is just built for this conference. I think UCLA wins this league, and I do think that conference comes down between that game on February 28th between Purdue and UCLA. Sleeper, you already took Penn State because that was going to be mine. I still think, and I don't know how much of a sleeper it is because they, been ranked, been out. I think Illinois, man. I think if Illinois gets right, I think Illinois can win this league. I really do.
Sleeper for me, Maryland. I think Maryland's.
Well,
I
yep.
think Maryland.
There we
should
go.
be in the top 25 at this point. I think they're a top 20.
They're in ours.
country.
They're in the ECB top 25.
Yeah. And they should be in everybody. I think they should be a unanimous top 25 team. I don't think people have watched this team enough.
I love the Maryland pick. I love the Maryland pick. Let's go to the Big East. Now we have a couple teams picked from here. Coach, I'll come to you first. Does Connecticut, they're playing much better. They finally figured out who they are. We've talked about this ad nauseum the last couple of weeks. Connecticut, Marquette, St. John's, or a surprise?
I'm going with Danny and my man Alex Caravan. He's my favorite player to watch. I told you that. They righted the ship. They fixed their defense. Aiden Mahaney's a huge key. I think if he could really help them off the bench and however they're going to play him. But I'm taking UConn.
DeRosa, this is your conference.
Yeah, when you were texting with Coach about going back and watching some of Coach's old games, I was actually watching back the UConn Butler game, and it's like I didn't want to be that guy to like jump in, like they're having fun. But yeah, I'm not gonna go with UConn. I'm gonna go with Marquette. They've been the best team at this point. UConn's really good. Caravan is cold. Coach, I mean, the way he hit 2 huge threes against Butler, they ran that action they love, that he sets the screen, then he flares out, and Butler was so loud that would be one. If I was ever coaching a team, that's one thing I'm going to take. Like, absolutely. I love that little action they run. But I got this Marquette team. They found a way to beat Butler when they were not shooting the ball well, and they're a very good shooting team. I just think they're one of those teams that's going to find ways to win. And I think in any game they play in the Big East this year, they have the best player on the floor. That's Cam Jones.
I can't, with the way they're playing, I can't pick against Connecticut. I just feel like an idiot if I do. And we talked about kind of the unbalanced schedule. Connecticut's going to win or lose the conference between February 1st and February 11th. They play at Marquette, home St. John's, at Creighton. They go 3-0 on that. They're winning the league. But it also may come down to Wednesday, March 5th, second to last game of the regular season. They play host the Marquette. Ooh. I think Connecticut wins the league, but their schedule, again, in conference kind of plays out to their favor. Look at their next couple. DePaul, Providence, Villanova, Georgetown, Creighton, Butler.
Could
those
be
6-0,
games. 5-0.
Yeah, those are all winnable games, and it's going to give them an advantage. Sleeper team. If it's not Marquette, if it's not Connecticut, is it St. John's? Do the Hoyas, DeRosa. Do the Hoyas make a run?
I think the most interesting conversation in the Big East is 3 teams I think are tournament going to be in the tournament. I think St. John's isn't. The other 2 are locks. St. John's isn't there yet, but they're right there. Can the Big East get a 4th team in the tournament? That's the question. And who would that be? Would it be a Creighton? Would it be a Georgetown? Would it be a Butler? They're going to need someone to break through. Xavier, even. It's still possible, especially if they can get Fremantle back late in the season. I've heard that's a rumor. We don't have any official word, obviously. I don't really think there's a sleeper team, but I'm not going to lie. This Georgetown team is starting to win me over. They're really starting to win me over.
They should.
Caleb Williams to me, and I'm not saying this because I don't want to get into a fight with his dad on Twitter, which is definitely true, by the way. I want no problems, Mr. Williams. I want no problems. But I just love his game. He is one of those guys who does all of the little things. And I think guys like that reflect that the culture has changed at Georgetown. He's not a guy who needs to go out there and get 20 points. And he's a freshman, by the way. He's a very mature freshman who just does the little things to win games. He doesn't care if he's playing 5 minutes, if he's playing 25 minutes. Those guys to me reflect that a culture has changed. And I'm starting to buy into this Georgetown team. That said, they play Xavier coming up. Then after that game, they play the top 3 teams in the Big East. You win that Xavier game, which is not going to be easy. Then you win one of those next 2. I think there's a legitimate chance you could talk about this team as being in the conversation for the NCAA tournament, which I think is crazy.
Top
at this
4
point.
in the Big East, maybe.
Yeah,
But it's there for the taking.
It is there. There are 4 through 8. If you want to throw Providence in there, I don't think they are, but I think there's an argument to throw them in there. 4 through 9 in this conference is very even.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think there is a deep sleeper in this conference at all. I think the top 2 are just so much better than everybody else. I don't think it's all that close.
Coach, let's go to probably the hardest one to pick, the best conference of college basketball, the Southeastern Conference. And the way I look at this, if you told me one of 8 or 9 teams could win this league, I wouldn't bat an eye. And I mean that sincerely. I know Auburn's the favorite right now, but I think Alabama, I picked them in the magazine. I think that they are still extremely talented. You talk about battle tested. We've talked about that schedule and the gauntlet they've went through. They're going to be ready for SEC play. I think Alabama over Auburn wins the league, but man, this is a brutal league, Coach.
I changed my pick from this morning to about an hour ago. I was going to go on a limb and say Florida. I'm going to pick Auburn to win the league.
Yeah.
Same as Coach here. If I was looking for a sleeper, I'd go to that schedule angle and see, okay, who are playing some of these games. That would be the note. Looks like Auburn only plays Florida once, and that's at home. They play Alabama twice.
And play Kentucky once, and that's March 1st in Rupp Arena.
Yeah, it would be like I'd have to analyze the schedule to try to find a sleeper. I haven't done that yet, full disclosure. So I apologize. I guess I haven't been prepared enough, but that's hard to find. It'd be like who plays Auburn only once or Kentucky only once or Florida only once than that. I haven't done that, and I'm just going to take the best team in the country, and that's Auburn.
I think it's fair. Sleepers, you could go a million. You could say Kentucky. You could say Arkansas. They're playing better. You could say Florida. You could say Georgia. Mississippi State, I think, is going to be there at the end. What a league. And then let's finish this out with the Mountain West. We talked about them earlier in the show here. The Mountain West, really solid league for the last few years. Utah State, Boise State, New Mexico, San Diego State. I still wouldn't discard completely Colorado State making a run. What does UNLV actually have? They're 1-0 in league play right now, but 7-5 overall. DeRosa, Mountain West, who do you got?
Yeah, I had Boise State preseason. I'm going to have to back off that pick. Their roster construction, they run 4 forwards on the floor at the same time with 1 guard. They run some weird lineups. I don't love it. They're definitely going to be atop the league. I still think they can make the NCAA tournament, but the Washington State game, the Boston College game, those were 2 games where I didn't think they played well at all. And I just think they're going to get bit in conference play a couple times. I can't pick them to win it, unfortunately. I'm going to go San Diego State, defensive identity. Even though they did lose at home to Utah State, they just have that defensive identity that I really like. I trust Brian Dutcher's group again.
Coach, I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit. I'm going to go New Mexico. They play a fast tempo, and they've got a guard and a big I really like. Donovan Dent at the guard and Nelly Jr. Joseph at the center spot. I think this conference is kind of open for them to take. I like Richard Pitino. I'm going to New Mexico.
So we're going to do 3 different ones of only this league. I'm going with Michael's preseason pick, and I'm taking Boise State.
Tyson Degenhart, man. Really good.
Hooper.
Really good. All right, let's start rounding the show out here. I think those conference predictions will be fun to go back, see how right, how wrong we are. We're always throwing curveballs. That SEC, man, that's going to be nuts. Let's do bank on it for the early part of the week here. And I'll lead mine off. It's actually a game that tips off tonight. I don't know if it shows the time, but I know it's tonight sometime. Western Kentucky plays at Michigan tonight. They are, according to KenPom, a 16-point underdog. I've watched Western Kentucky multiple times. I've seen them play Grand Canyon in a 2-point game. I actually watched the highlights of the opening game of the year against Wichita State. I, of course, watched them play Kentucky. This team is well coached. They play a fast tempo, and they do not care who they play. They're getting up and down. They play good defense, and they are physical, and they've got one of the best mid-major guards in the country in Don McHenry. They got the Indiana transplant, Christian Lander. I really, really like this Western Kentucky team. They go to Michigan. I think Michigan's going to win this game, but my bank on it is Western Kentucky has this game within 1 score at the end of the game. 1, 2, or 3 points. They are going to put a lot of pressure on Michigan tonight up there in Ann Arbor. I think Michigan wins. Western Kentucky is going to be within 1 score the whole night.
My bank on it's going to be tomorrow in the Big 12. The Arizona struggles continue. TCU goes into McHale Center and beats U of A.
Jamie Dixon. I always liked him as a coach, too. I always thought his teams played really well. DeRosa?
Yeah, I wanted to go with St. Bonaventure over VCU, but we don't know the status of DeSante Bowen. I do like the same. I just can't. Every year I end up falling for the Bonnies at some point, and I think that's happening again this year. I just really like Coach Mark Schmidt, and I like the way they build a roster. I'm going to stick in the A10. I don't think this is I usually like taking some long shots. I don't think this is a long shot. I think George Mason puts a beat down on Davidson. I like this George Mason team quite a bit. They're athletic. They've got like good guards. I really like Darius Maddox. Jalen Haynes has been good. I really like the way I think Tony Skinn has been building this program. I talked about him last year. They had that weird situation with Keyshawn Hall in his first year, which is just that's a story that doesn't get talked about enough. That Keyshawn Hall pretty much like flat out said he sat out because other teams were calling him in the portal. I don't think we talk about that enough. That he just decided to sit out the last like 4 or 5 games, including the A10 tournament. They got bit by that bad, but that was a really good team last year. I think Coach Skinn is going to do a really good job at George Mason for as long as he's there. I like this George Mason team quite a bit. I think they're a sleeper to win the conference. I think they put a beat down on Davidson.
I always appreciate DeRosa give us kind of the off the beaten path bank on it. I really appreciate that. Let's do shout outs and get out of here. Mine are easy. I got 3. Colby Rogers, 28 against Ole Miss yesterday. I don't love his shot form. I really don't. And I like high releases, but it's like it's almost a hitch. I don't know, but it works for him. And he went off against Ole Miss, 28. Tyson Degenhart back to Boise State, 26 points in their 2-point victory over San Jose State in a conference game yesterday. That kid is phenomenal. He has been for the last couple of years. And then staying in the Mountain West, I just talked about him. New Mexico, 10-3. They beat Colorado State yesterday on the road in an impressive conference road victory. I talked about I like Richard Pitino. I like his teams. I like the guard. I like the Nelly Jr. Joseph. So those are my 3 shout-outs for today.
I'm going to go with the shout-out to the guys on that 99 Anvil Cleona team.
Yeah, I love it.
that got some airtime on everything college basketball today. I didn't see that one coming. So shout-out to them. A few of them actually may be listening. And then I'll also give a shout-out to Mick Cronin and UCLA beating Gonzaga first time, right? They'd beaten them in 3 or 4 or 5 tries, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yep, I got 2. You mentioned I like going off the beaten path. We're doing that again. The HBCU showcase happened. Hampton ended up beating Howard. Good win for Hampton. Wayne Bristol, former Georgetown Hoya, 18 points. Noah Farrakhan played at Eastern Michigan, West Virginia. And I don't remember where he started his career, but he had 17. But I'm going to shout out again. I mentioned him on either the last show or the show before that. Blake Harper at 34. Freshman, 10 of 18 from the field, 12-15 from the free throw line. Blake Harper is a problem. He is a problem. He is a name that if you haven't heard anywhere else, you can say you've heard him on the Everything College Basketball Show. Blake Harper's a guy who I think will be a name in college basketball in years to come. He's just so crafty. I really like his game. Shout out to him. And Wyoming, they were at home, but Coach Sonny Wicks took this job really late in the offseason, really late. And they find a way to beat a talented Nevada team. That is a tough matchup for a lot of teams because they have so much length on the perimeter. They found a way to win. Obi Agbim, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. He had 18 points. Tuku Tainamo, also pronounced that name wrong, 15 points off the bench. But they found a way to beat a good Nevada team, well-coached team, 8-5 on the season. Like it's an uphill battle for them in Mountain West play because that's a good league, but found a way to win. They found a way to beat a good team. That's shout out to them.
I love it. And as always, you guys, rest in peace to Greg Gumbel. We will miss him, but thankful for his contributions. But New Year's coming, guys. Conference play is here. We've got a lot. We're starting the back end of our season here. It's about to get real when we come to you on Thursday when we talk about this. We got a lot of big-time SEC games to preview for next Saturday. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Happy New Year in advance. And until Thursday, we will catch you guys down the road.
Wednesday night, go Irish.